opportunities for young communities. We are meeting today and tomorrow to discuss current and future challenges and solutions related to education, skills and employment for more than 200 million young people under the age of 29 in the Arab region. Our meeting comes at a critical juncture. For this are the many initiatives and programs taking place in the region. If you look at these part of the initiatives, I've also looked at the news today in some of the countries around the region, and our host country, Egypt, has also only yesterday launched a national plan for training for employment. So it is a big issue and an important the main challenges that we are facing in skills and employment for young people, but also to attempt to provide solutions and ideas to influence policy through lessons learned from the region, between ourselves, from the UK and beyond, especially in areas related to employer engagement and engaging other social. We organized or conducted a very short survey using social media. We used the British Council regional Facebook page, and I'm just going to play some of the responses. Two of the young Arabs who responded have said this when they were asked about reform issues. What can we do to improve education in the region? This young Arab talked about weaknesses in teacher training and a vicious cycle. Distinguished guests to address the audience with some opening remarks. First, His Excellency Dr. Badre Allali has a long and successful career in the diplomatic field, both at the League of Arab States and Morocco's Foreign Ministry.
Good morning, everybody. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يشرفني بالنيابة عن جامعة الدول العربية مشاركة هذه النخبة المتميزة في اجتماعكم، وأن تتوج أعمالك بنتائج تخدم وتنمو الأرض. السيدات والدكتور مميز وهام بالنسبة للدول العربية في السنوات الأخيرة، فكما نعي جميعا بجيل مبدع ومبتكر قادر على المنافسة، كما أن المناهج الدراسية وحدها لا تشبع احتياجات الطلبة من الجوانب العلمية لتلبية احتياجات سوق العمل، ولهذا فعلينا إلى أولوية والمجتمع المدني لما له من أهمية قصوى في سير العملية التعليمية، وعليهم تعزيز تبادل الخبرات الناجحة فيما بينهم، حالة من إشراك الشباب في العمل المجتمعي وفي عمليات اتخاذ القرارات التنمية المجتمعية العربية. وأود من انتهاز هذه الفرصة
attention. I think it's also equally important to acknowledge many of the successes which are taking place in the region in the area of education. If we look at access, if we look at primary enrollment, access to primary education, access to higher education, if we look at girls' access to education, rural education, literacy. If we look at the increasing attention being paid to vocational training, increasing attention being paid to links with into the issue of employability, into the issue of English language. From this is hope we can create some new partnerships and a commitment to establish targeted education for employment initiatives. If I may just mention some of the speakers, I do this simply to give us a flavour of what we have to look forward to, so apologies in advance if somebody's name is not mentioned, just to give us a sense of the breadth of experience that we have with us here. Speakers include Mohamed, Director of Higher Education in Morocco, who will be showing us how his team is taking forward reforms to ensure that structural changes promote professionalisation and diversification training, along with employment guidance, and importantly, monitoring systems for graduates. Mariam Garson from the Office of the Director of Operations for Noha, based in the occupied Palestinian territories, will describe their program in Gaza, which promotes social enterprise and employability. Mukhtar Bouaili, Chairman of the National Board for Technical and Vocational Education in Libya, will present on their new entrepreneurial learning community, which provides a real opportunity to shift from government-provided jobs to self-employment, entrepreneurship, and the creation of small and medium-sized enterprises. From our host here in Egypt, Zainab Abdelrazak from the Egyptian Banking Institute will share with us her experience of developing continuous professional development approach and framework to assist professional institutions in aligning their curricula to meet industry needs. And Dr. Iman Bibad of Ashok will take us through her work in promoting social entrepreneurship to develop partnerships with private organisations, the public sector, media, universities and schools. And from the UK, Simon Perriman, who is Executive Director of the UK Commission for Employment and Skills, will look at new solutions that include rebalancing the respective roles of government and the private sector in tackling skills and explore some of the most pressing skills challenges that we're facing in the UK. From Pearson Education, David Crover, Director of International Products, will cover Pearson's work on qualifications for employability. And Matt Anderson, Executive Director of TVET UK, will look at the key drivers in raising the profile and acceptability of vocational education across MENA and globally. And of course, the British Council will be very pleased to share as well. We'll be sharing some of the research we've been doing, including Success Today Starts Tomorrow, a piece of work to try to understand what lies behind the relatively low IELTS English language scores coming out of the Gulf, and how we're planning to work with partners in the UK and the region to develop innovative solutions. And we'll also be sharing some research around the role of English in skills development. Martin Rose will be talking about a survey, some research he's done into education in the Maghreb. And John Nagg, who comes from our headquarters, will be sharing the kind of global perspective, the British Council's global perspective on initiatives across the world to support the teaching and learning of English. A final word, if I may, about the role of English. It is very clear from employers, from young people, from all of the research, that English is one of the key skills that young people will need going forward. We're urging a particular focus on technology and digital learning. Traditional products, face-to-face teaching remain important, but will just not deliver the scale that we need, the scale of change. To show this, we'll be sharing some work we've done in Morocco and Tunisia, where we've worked with something like 20,000 students, and it's provided effective opportunities for. The key to this has been digital material, but supported by the teacher in situ, by the teacher at the university where the students are studying. So it's that classic blended support. 70% of these students have improved their level of English. That compares to 70% of students who normally drop out of digital programs. So the key element here being that blended supported learning, the role played by the teacher. We'll also, of note I think, is our Facebook page, where we have more than 3 million young people across Middle East, North Africa, who come to our Facebook page to develop and learn English with us online. Again, one of the key elements there is we have the English Doctor, we have interactive
activities online. We have support for writing a CV, support for applying for a job. So although it's online digital English learning material, it's very much linked to the needs of the young people. So finally, if I may, I'd like to just end by saying that, as Dr. Badre, I think, mentioned, the young demographic is us with a big opportunity. If we can together collectively launch initiatives which make a difference in providing young people with the skills they need to be employable and to create economic growth, and English is one of those key skills, then we have an opportunity to make a very, very big difference. And to do that, we're going to have to form in these next 2 days new partnerships and new concrete projects that we will collectively take forward. That's why we're here, and I'm very much looking forward to the next 2 days, and I hope that we all have an enjoyable and successful symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Now I would like to introduce His Excellency Ambassador John Casson, British Ambassador to Egypt. Mr. Casson assumed his post in Egypt in August 2014. Before that, he was the Prime Minister's Foreign Affairs Private Secretary since 2010. His career has had a strong focus on the Arab region, including Deputy Ambassador in Jordan and head of the FCO's Near East and North Africa Department. Before assuming government, Mr. Casson worked as a research assistant in Cambridge University and in the House of Commons. He received an Order of St. Michael and St. George in the 2014 Queen's Birthday Honor List. Please welcome His Excellency.
Good morning, thank you very much indeed. First of all, thank you very much to the British Council, and thank you very much to the Arab League, and congratulations to you for putting together this excellent and important event over the next couple of days. Dr. Mohamed from the Ministry of Education here, we thank you for your support that the Egyptian government has provided. Dr. Badre, we thank you very much for the engagement of the Arab League in this important agenda. I just wanted to say that I'm very aware that I've walked into a room that's chock full of expertise on this subject of employability and education for employability. As a diplomat, I'm not proposing to give you the answers. I'm waiting for you to give those to us over the next 2 days. I'm not actually proposing to even tell you what the right questions are, because Adrian's already done a pretty good job of flagging up most of the difficult issues before you, and I'm sure you know better than I do what are the tough questions. I just want to tell you, from the point of view of someone who works in the wider political realm, why what you're doing here today really matters, and how what you're working on in your specific field fits into a bigger story of where the region is going, or the journey that this region is on as it moves into and through the 21st century. Because I hope you feel, even though it's a Tuesday morning, early, you've probably flown in last night, maybe you haven't had enough coffee yet, but I hope that you feel the hand of destiny is on your shoulder a little bit here as you work. Let me explain why. Let me explain why by asking you a question. One of the things that is most rewarding and most inspiring about being British Ambassador in Egypt is the opportunity to hear from the future by meeting the young people and engaging with the young people of Egypt, and to hear their voices and in a way let them set the agenda. And often when I talk to young people here, I ask them a question. I'm going to ask you that question. And I'm sure many of you count as young people. One of the great things about coming to Egypt is that you stay young, you stay shab for longer, because you can be shab well into your 40s, I'm pleased to discover here. So think about this question. Think about the 4 million people that Adrian talked about that come to the labour market needing new jobs every year in this region. In Egypt it's 700,000, 2 million additional. If you hear that and you think we've got 4 million new young people, if you think about one young person, I'm sure many of you are parents, think about all the hard work and the love and the effort and the care and the money that's required to get one young person to adulthood in good shape, and then think about that 4 million times every year. If that makes you feel optimistic, would you please put your hand up now? And if it makes you feel a bit tired and pessimistic, put your hand up now. Okay. Good. I'm glad there's a general optimism in the room, because if you guys aren't optimistic, we've got a real problem. But I think it's a good reflection of the reality that there's a mixture of views. Because, to be honest, the answer to that question, is it good news or bad news that we have all these young people in this region, is not yet decided. And it depends on all of us. It depends on the work that you're all doing. Because the youth of this region, the youth of Egypt, the youth of all the other countries you represent, could be a problem. It could be a burden. It could be a cause of social stress, economic burden, pressure on public services. Or it could be the great engine that drives this part of the world into a really strong future of prosperity, opportunities and inclusive growth for all Egyptians, whatever region they're from, whatever religion they're from, whether they're men or women, whether they're young or old. And success for Egypt also in becoming more democratic and a well-governed country. And I have to say that I won't succeed in that quite challenging mandate from the British government unless you all succeed in your work of helping young people access and succeed in the jobs they need. Our countries in this region won't be stable, they won't be prosperous, they won't be politically successful unless young people have the opportunities they deserve to build the life they need through work, through flourishing, through learning and growing. And at the same time, you won't succeed without me. Unless we as the politicians and the diplomats can make these countries stable and safe, unless we can make them more democratic and well-governed, unless we can make them prosperous and growing economically, you won't be able to put young people and job opportunities together in a successful way. So we need each other. And you all well know, there's no single answer, there's no single silver bullet that's going to solve the challenge of employability for young people. It will happen by people coming together. That's the approach that we take as the British government. We try to invest in the job creation half of the equation. We're very proud that Britain is the biggest foreign investor in Egypt, for example, that generates jobs, opportunities every year for Egyptians. But at the same time, we invest in the other half, between the private sector and the public sector, and without that, we won't succeed. There's also a partnership between different parts of the public sector. I think we all in government know that actually this problem of how do you equip young people doesn't just lie in the education ministry, or the higher education ministry, or the health ministry, or the Ministry of Investment, or the Ministry of Trade, or the Ministry of Planning, or the Ministry of International Cooperation, or the Ministry of Interior. All of those ministries need to get it right for us to succeed. And so we need partnership between us in government. And thirdly, we need partnership between countries. There's best practice examples, as you're going to find out in the next 2 days, in lots of different corners of the world and lots of different corners of the region, and you need to put it together. And I think there needs to be partnership with young people too. So I would encourage you to, as you go through the next 2 days, build the relationships, build the partnerships, because without them, if we each want to plough our own furrow in isolation, we'll never succeed. The second thing, the second P, along with partnership, is get practical. We'll only succeed, and I'm very clear about this in my own work as ambassador, we've got to stop moving from just talking as diplomats to doing. And similarly, in this area of employability, we've got to not just be talking, not just have opinions, not just have theories, not just have academic research, important as it is. We need to get practical. And so the second thing I would urge you to do is, as you go through the next 2 days, look for things to take away that we will actually do differently as a result of the time you spent in this room with each other. Look for the decisions, the next steps, the practical action. Don't just talk about what are we going to do, talk about how we're going to do it too. So focus on partnership, focus on practicalities. And the third thing I would say is be partisan. Now, I'm working here as an outside diplomat in a country where the politics is full of extremely strong opinions, and in many cases quite polarized opinions. Egyptians have extremely strong views, rightly so, about the future of their country. And people often say to me, in fact, I received a message on Twitter yesterday saying, Ambassador, don't take sides. And I have to say I disagree with that. Now don't worry, I'm not completely stupid. I'm not going to take sides tomorrow night when Allali plays Zamalek, because I know not to interfere in some very sensitive matters. And actually I don't mean we should take sides in terms of supporting one political party. That is not our responsibility. But I do think we need to take the side of the young people. I want Britain not to be neutral. I want Britain to be passionately engaged on the side of Egypt's future, which means on the side of the 45 million people under 25 in this country. Because without them, nothing else we're doing will succeed. And so I would encourage you to, you're all experts, many of you are academics, many of you are steeped in the data. One of the great things you bring to the table is your objectivity. But I would say, as well as being all those things, be passionate about the future. And let that passion overcome the challenges, let it overcome the cynicism, let it overcome people who feel tired after 20 years of working on these challenges. So 3 things for you. Be partners, be practical, be passionate and partisan. And I think that's a good model that you can give to the rest of us, because it's not just in this field of employability for young people. It's for all of us who are trying to work on the future of this region, on change in this region. I think if we have those 3 Ps as the DNA of the way we behave, we have a great chance of success. So we shouldn't just work on our own agendas and things that we control by ourselves. We should be partners. We shouldn't just be talking. We should be doing. We should be practical. And we shouldn't be too neutral and too passive and too despairing. We should be partisan and passionate about the things we're trying to change. If you can do that, you have a great chance of success, and you will be a fantastic example for the rest of us, and I thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I would like to welcome now our keynote speaker for this morning, His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Yousef, Deputy Education Minister. And Dr. Yousef, I'm happy and glad to say is a government official, but from the employer side, from industry. He has nearly 25 years experience on board of several companies for several years. Dr. Yousef holds a PhD in philosophy from the UK and has worked as a lecturer at Cairo University and the British University in Egypt. And I also know for sure that Dr. Mohamed is open to partnerships, and he is practical and passionate about solving issues.
Council and the Arab League for organizing such an important symposium on employability, skills and opportunities for young people in the Arab world. Indeed, it is an important subject, and coming from working in the vocational education and training for almost 5 years before I came to this position, half of our students enroll in the technical education, which is the general preparatory. Technical education starts from grade 9 to grade 12, as well as from grade 9 to grade 14. We have 4 main specialties in our technical education, which include industry, agriculture. I was not part of it, but I used it, and it was quite a tremendous effort, and I understand that the British Council and the SQA was part of that. And we actually have the project manager, Dr. Mohamed Al-Fatih. He was project manager for this marvelous job. It's a job that has been done and has been used, but we need to continue this. Engineers and chief technicians and all of that. And to give you a sense of the problem, we have 2 million students in the technical education. They are distributed as being practical and being pragmatic. My previous work coming from the industry is also, I consider it very important to our students and should be embedded in their practical training as well as curriculum. As you may know, that the value chain of the education process consists of 5 main components. So the students, the teachers, the curricula, the facilities, and finally the transition to work or school to work transition. We are working on these elements concurrently because we cannot work actually start to finish or finish to start. We need to work concurrently in plan to develop the TVET sector problems. We try to be practical and we try to address the market needs. So the student, as the very first part in this chain, and the most important part, of course, we are looking to the problems associated with him, but in a rather comprehensive manner, because I can see that lots of successes has been done in the past, but things that one of our main problems is that we suffer a high rate of absenteeism. Some of it is due to school quality, and I'm not denying that, but other reasons will include students need to support their families, because most probably those who are joining the TVET sector or the education in my country, the training part. And there is here a balance to maintain really. This is the final balance, because the school can shift to become too productive, that would affect the education process. But anyway, so more productive so as to offer financial support to students together with practical training in a work-based learning environment. Productive schools in Egypt through different models such as the daily education and schools in a factory. It's important here that just to emphasize His Excellency and the Ambassador that solutions that come from abroad does not really efficiently work in our environment. We need to understand it, we need to look at the basis, and then we need to customize the concept of our classical TE technical education system by introducing some internships in factories, in farms, etc. Work-based learning is an important tool to teach our students the work ethics and discipline. This is an important issue in the sector. The second issue is the teacher. We are now embarking on an ambitious plan to train and qualify our teachers so as to obtain the updated knowledge and training in their fields of work. We are looking for ways to increase their revenues in a manner that is directly related to their performance. Productive school is one mechanism for that. We have an ambition that's not working together. You know, I mean, we have this famous writer Abbas al-Aqad, and he told, roughly he said in English is that he was talking about communism in the 40s, so he said that the communism is one of the issues, the policy of streaming technical education to technical vocational IE levels 2 and 3 according to the NSS, and expanding the latter is important in this regard, and this is what I just mentioned. Curricula is, develop our curricula, we are using the DACAM approach, which is an important. It is important here to mention that the private and public sectors, of course, play a leading role in this, and especially this for the workshops and labs. We need to have all these facilities updated and complying with industry standards. The fifth element is in the value chain is school to work. Many of the key areas funded by the Egyptian government, 67 million euros, and EU 50 million euros. The project has started, and we have launched the advertisements for 6 key positions around 10 years, which include the ETPs. And ETPs, I believe that they have an important role and will have an important role in the development of the TVET sector in Egypt. Now, we are not we are encouraging and working to open process for the TVET, our TVET students to continue their studies in a technology of professional institutions like engineering syndicate, for example, with these graduates, because I cannot force someone to have a 4-year degree in technological aspect, and then he goes to the industry and he doesn't have work because he's not really professionally accredited by, or professionally recognized, recognized by an engineering institution. So then what he does, he actually either work on the lower, enable them to find that place in the industry. We believe that we need to have an efficient and effective, yet effective governance structure for the TVET sector in Egypt. It would help the stakeholders that would, this efficient and effective governance structure would help the stakeholders rather than competing with each other through the integration of strategies, policies, resources, and through a clear vision of the government. And the Prime Minister Yousef, they had a clear vision. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I hope that you have a successful session. Thank you very much.
To join me, and we're going to have a very brief session now, just setting the scene, telling you what we're going to do and how we're going to do it in the next 2 days, and Noha will start.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your participation. My name is Noha. Aiad. I am the officer in charge of the international relations in the education department at the League of Arab States, and I'm really very honored to be part of this symposium today. I will give you a brief on the aims and outcomes of this symposium. The symposium aims at analyzing young people's skills and employment across the Arab countries, discussing the role of English language in expanding the employment opportunities, looking at solutions, trying to bridge both the supply and demand factors, which will increase opportunities for young people in the Arab countries. And this will happen through, first, supporting developing of skills in Arab countries, and second, addressing the needs of the labor market. And finally, it's a good opportunity to identify the role of the government, the private sector, and the NGOs and other agencies in promoting employability. Second, the outcomes of the symposium. Structure and the themes of the symposium. Thank you.
Just again, these are the themes. I don't want to go into details again. You've all read the brochure and the message, but these are just a recap of the 3 main themes. The main skill for the work of world, soft skills development. We are having also sessions on that from the region, experiences from that. TVET is a major issue. We heard from Dr. Yousef about the percentage of young people entering this field in a country like Egypt, but also similarly in other areas. So TVET, higher education, language policy and employability, all are themes that we are going to be discussing throughout the presentations and the discussions in the 2 days. Again, of course, the link between education and industry is again, we cannot emphasize this more, and pedagogy, including how skills are planned for and implemented in our region, dimensions, skills provision and delivery, classroom training, work-based training, again another important area, training for education, professional and curriculum reform. These are things that we are going to explore, and we're going to learn again from experiences from the region and the UK. And then of course qualifications and certifications, which is an important issue in raising the quality. Don't have the luxury of postponing issues about opportunities and empowerment of the young people. Action has to be taken in that area. We have sessions about social entrepreneurship. Again, 21st century skills, STEM skills, minimalism, social learning platforms for young people. The regions, all the countries in the region face, and we really need practical and quick ways of how to change the image and status of all involved in TVET. Days and 30 breakout sessions. Again, these are the sessions, and you get to choose which ones you attend. So again, a very condensed 2 days, and we expect different domains. Ample networking and discussion opportunities, again, among peers for knowledge sharing and talking about best practice in management in the UK. I encourage you to do this. The sessions and the discussions will be conducted in both Arabic and English, and we have translation, so if you haven't got your equipment yet, please do. We will be interchanging between Arabic and English. We have a dedicated website have contributed to that, so I encourage you to visit the website and the other media and social media tools that the British Council has for skills development. Now, again, very quickly, just some housekeeping information for you. The steering committee members for the symposium here, and we all have the tags in blue. So if you need anything from anyone with a blue name tag, please, we are happy to attend to your requirements and requests. There's an evaluation, a scorecard that in your pack that we will need you to fill tomorrow afternoon. Please, this is very important. But it's very important. Timings and changes in the program. Again, as I said, a very big program with a large number of speakers. We've had some unfortunate cancellations due to travel arrangements, due to some countries people could not travel from. So there are some changes. You have an updated program. We will probably update you there. People staying in the hotel, there will be a coach, and we will meet in the lobby at 6:45 to go there with a coach. And our Egyptian colleagues who are not staying in the hotel, and please join us. They can also join us in the coach or meet us there directly. Again, very quickly, just the locations of the rooms. The breakout rooms. This one also will be used as a breakout room, but we have 4 other rooms, 3 of which are on the left as you go out, and so this is it. I invite you for a coffee break, and we resume here at 11 for the first plenary session. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, and let's try and get down to business. My name is Yousef, and I have the honor of being here. You will find a lot of information about our
distinguished panel.
Let me introduce them quickly with a line or two. From near to far, where I'm standing, we have Dr. Iman Bebers, Regional Director for Akusha, which is involved in promoting social group. Dr. Dalia Khalifa heads the World Bank Group's E4E initiative for Arab youth, which aims to enhance Arab youth employability by investing in education and training and enabling solutions that lead to skills more relevant to the marketplace. Next to her we have Mr. Mahmoud Al-Shirbini, who is Executive Director of the Industrial Training Council in Egypt, and he will be talking exactly about that, industrial training in Egypt. And then next to him we have Mr. John Nag. He is the Senior Advisor for Learning and Teaching, UK English and Exams at the British Council. Before I open the floor, and before opening the floor, we will listen to each of our panelists talk for about 5 minutes. But before this, allow me to live next door to a Christian, a priest who was very much of a law-abiding citizen, but the police officer just didn't like this. And one night, when he was in duty, he saw the priest riding on his motorbike, and he thought that this is my opportunity, I will get him now and give him a ticket. So, pull over here. Police officer goes, show me your driving license. Looks at it and everything is okay, okay. How about your mirrors? Mirrors are okay. Wheels are okay. The police officer in the end says, aren't you afraid of riding on your motorbike that late at night alone? So the priest goes, that immediate, most obvious meaning of the word education. It transcends the immediate, direct meaning of the word education to other things, which I assume, at least guessing from what I heard this morning from the distinguished panelists, in this part of the world, Dr. Iman Bebers, Regional Director of Akusha.
Is this working? Okay. Well, thank you everyone. For the public, and it's very important when we're talking about education. We've all been listening to this for a long time. We know we have a problem with education in the region. I am a regional director, so I'm not just going to speak about Egypt, I'm speaking about the Arab region. We have a problem with education. We have an education that does not comply and does not address the needs of the labor market. We have an education that does not help children have change-making skills, what Ashoka calls change-making skills. We have an education that does not produce everyone a change maker, which is something we believe in. We believe in that we need an enabling in. This is one way, and inshallah we will one day. But there is another way, which is looking for those people with innovative ideas that we call social entrepreneurs that are very keen to address the problems. And that's what Ashoka does. We look for those people who have new ideas. We look for those people who are expanding the market. We have, I will not take a lot of time, but I will speak today about many examples
been doing over the past number of years to address the issue of youth employability and skills development, particularly in the Arab world, which we all know is a major challenge, yet also an opportunity. I guess we can step back and look at this from a global perspective. From a global perspective, we know, and I'm going to paraphrase the ILO, that this is not an issue just of what can we do to make sure our youth are fulfilling their potential, but it is also an issue for our futures, all of us, the entire globe. So youth internationally have been facing this challenge of youth employability for one of three reasons, either because of a failing business cycle, which is the case, for example, the youth in much of Europe, or they can be facing the fact of a failing education system, so it's a more systemic problem, or it can be a fact of conflict, which is not allowing them to access their potential. In the region, and the Arab youth are facing all three of these facts. Failing business cycles over the past 6-7 years. They've been facing the dilemma and the fear and the issues related to conflict, and they are the result, or they are suffering from a failing education system. Education systems across the board, not just from the primary and secondary, but in the post-secondary and in the technical and vocational training space. All of these systems have been failing under the burden of growing numbers, under the lack of the ability of the public purse to invest in the hard and infrastructure required to maintain quality, but also in the soft investment for the teachers and administrators in order to upskill them. This has been a burden on the public purse for much too long. And it's a burden that the public purse should not have to carry on its own. Education and training of our youth is not a government problem. It is society's problem. And if you look at what emerging markets across the world have been doing, you will see that there has been a gradual shift from a predominantly public sector-based education system, especially in the post-secondary space and in technical vocational training, away from one that is dominated by the public sector into one that has moved into a dominated by private provision. And private provision here can be both for in the region. The IFC and World Bank Group about 5 years ago commissioned a study in which it wanted to look at why youth in the region have been facing this huge burden. The answers are not surprising to all of you. It's because of the failing systems that I just talked about. And it's because of the failure of the linkages between what the job market needs, what employers need, and what the education system is providing. So we have been trying to work more closely with all stakeholders, inviting them to the table so that they can participate in a broad-based stakeholder effort to respond to the growing needs of addressing youth employability in the region. And I will speak a little bit more about that later, not to dominate my opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dalia Khalifa. Now I invite Mr. Mahmoud Al-Shirbini. Mr. Mahmoud Shirbini will be talking to us in his capacity as Director of Industrial Training Council in Egypt. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks, British Council, for inviting me, and thanks for the panel, of course, for your good self-history. Thank you very much. Well, I would like to introduce, to start my speech with some backgrounds about the ITC. I believe that most of you know ITC, but for those who's new to this domain, ITC has been established back in 2006 by a ministerial decree. It's one of the affiliates of the Ministry of Industry, Trade and SMEs. And the reason for establishing the ITC was mainly to be the regulator or the umbrella of all training provisions that are provided to the industrial community. And since then, we're doing a good job in that, and sometimes actually we cross the border to serve more or some other sectors like construction, tourism, and very recently the IT sector as well. And I would love also to remind you with some 2 or 3 figures that give us a glimpse about what the real problem that we are facing and how big it is. Unemployment rate in Egypt has become now 13.2%. We're talking about 3.5 million unemployed people. Most of them are from youth. And to secure this number, just not to get it increased, we have to create 850,000 new jobs every single year. Not to fight or to compete in unemployment, just to keep this figure as is. So imagine if you would love to fight unemployment and eliminate it, we have to secure more than 1 million new jobs every year to get rid of the unemployment within the 7 or 8 coming years. That's a huge number. That's almost more than a complete country population. So let's imagine that a country needs to work every year. So this is not one of the challenges. This is the most or the biggest challenge can ever face any government or any regime in the whole world. Bearing in mind a growth rate almost 3% with the rate of investment in the country, it's a very big question mark. We have to think differently because it's not working. The traditional way of fighting unemployment and this solve this mismatch between demand and supply, the traditional way is not working. We have to think differently. Entrepreneurship is one of the key. Reforming the education might take long, but we have to start. But we have to find a way to make our young people employable in a very short time and secure this huge number. Otherwise, the unemployment will increase year after year. So, discussing the dilemma of unemployment, as we are speaking right now, in the Industrial Training Council, we have a huge database. On one side that we just mentioned, we have 3.5 million unemployed. At the same time, I have only in ITC, one single entity within the government, more than 60,000 jobs vacant. All of them are in the industrial sector and some of them in trade, but mostly 80% in the industrial sector. So on one side, you have a lot of people seeking jobs and they cannot find it. On the other side, employers want to have a skilled labor and they cannot find it. The mismatch is huge, and it's not an easy task to make a mismatch because two main things that are making this dilemma. From one side, the job seeker does not trust the private sector because of a lot of things happen with the private sector that you can sign your contract at the same time you sign your resignation, very bad conditions, they are not paying a good salary that secure at least a decent life to young people. They are much more ambitious than this 600, 700 pounds that they got paid. So that's why, from one side, job seekers do not trust the private sector. The other thing is from the employer, they also do not trust the job seeker because they think that if they paid him well and if they trained him on the job, they will leave them just having the certificate. They will leave the company for only 100 pounds more in his salary for maybe the company next door. So the mistrust between the young people, the job seekers, and the private sector is a huge problem. And of course, it comes after that, lacking knowledge and skills that are required by the employers. And that's why an institution like ITC has created. We're trying to bridge the gaps between the demand and supply, between the employer and the job seeker. And I cannot agree more on what Dalia have just mentioned regarding we having a problem with the education system, the outcome of the education system, because if the education system are giving what required by the employers, someone like ITC wouldn't be here, and it shouldn't be there. So, and this is actually things that we have to think that mismatching skills development and gaining trust once again between the private sector and the employer should be one of our main focus in the next phase. Let me also tell you regarding that we failed to attract young people to work in the private sector in the past years, and I have to tell you that we have good successful pilots. I believe that most of us actually were part of a successful pilot in his own areas. but also Egypt has become a pilot country because we have a lot of pilots that haven't come into a national level. The pilot stays pilot, and this is something that we have also really need to discuss because we have the involvement of the private sector to run a technical school. We have almost 32 schools run by a private sector, and they are all successful. And the employment rate in these 32 schools is almost 90%. But it's only 32 out of 1,800 schools. 32. So we also need to think how to take this further, and the success, the pilot, could be taken into a national level. I will, not to unlong, and I will to close my speech with a real example that happened with me when we invited to launch the new BMW 7 Series in Egypt. That was the first time in BMW to assemble the 7 Series out of Germany. It was in Egypt. And we went there and we met the general manager at that time. And when we were talking to him, we asked him, let us know what is your impression and your opinion about the Egyptian labor. And we were talking about the blue-collars mainly. And amazingly, the general manager said that he worked in Brazil. He opened the factory in Brazil, and he worked in Germany for over 15 years. And he said the Egyptian labor is the most efficient labor that I have ever worked with. And we saw that he's just making some kind of compliments because we are here and we're representing the government or something. And I said, no, yeah, let's be frank. And he said, yes. I can tell you that the Egyptian labor is the most efficient labor that we can work with, but you have to secure 3 things. And literally, he said, give him the right tools, train him on how to use it, and control his smartness, because he will always try to find another way to do things differently. So, الفهلوة يعني, I don't know how to say it in our willing dealing. So it's exactly, you just put the system, give him the tools, the right tools, train him how to use it, and you will have a very good labor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Any now opening remarks by Magda Zeki, Director of Education and Scientific Research Department at League of the Arab States.
Thank you, Yousef. Good morning, everyone. And I think I have very little to add after all what they said, but I just want to second them. I mean, every one of them have said something that is very true, very realistic, and that we are facing in our daily life. However, I'd like to add a note of positivity maybe and focus on skills. Because I see a future with focus on skills rather than maybe degrees and big diplomas and PhDs. And I see a huge job market for young people who simply are good photographs, right? So I see kids who have their to think outside the box. It's time to think in a 21st century, I would say, awareness way, that is, everything is short and quick, money is quick. We don't think of terms of careers and long-term jobs. It's a different era, it's not our era anymore. So let's hope we can improve the skills on all levels, and let's hope the best for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Magda Zeki. Finally now, opening remarks from John Nag, Senior Advisor of Learning and Teaching, UK English and Exams at the British Council. Please, sir.
Thank you very much. Ahlan wa sahlan. Assalamu alaikum. It's lovely to be back, first of all, in the region after very many years away. And I was looking out and it's still the same river out there, isn't it? 4 things I'd like to talk about. First, what TVET is, what vocational education is and what it isn't or shouldn't be. Secondly, some areas of solutions. Thirdly, a word about English. And fourthly, the issue of gender. It seems to me that what vocational education shouldn't be is remedial education, and that vocational education should be a philosophy that goes right through the educational system, starting especially at primary and basic education and possibly before that, focusing on literacy and numeracy, the so-called, amusingly called 21st century skills, before then perhaps looking at technical skills. Secondly, the area of solutions, and these are all areas I think that will be examined more over the coming day and a half, looking at the Brookings Institute areas of solutions in their Arab World Learning Barometer report. First of all, more and better teachers needed. What successful education systems around the world have in common is that their teachers have high social status. And this high social status doesn't just happen accidentally, it happens as a result of committed, proactive central government policies. And there are examples of this at the moment. Early childhood education. Education doesn't begin at 6 or 7, it begins before that, and should do. Microsoft Windows is the operating system for computers, PCs, then maybe English is the operating system for international interpersonal communication these days. Everyone seems to accept that, even the French. So, but having said that, it's not the most important thing in the world. I mean, that's important to the British Council. It's not as important as native mother tongue literacy. Not as important as doing arithmetic correctly. And we have to investigate the mythology around who actually needs it and for what. Because there is a lot of mythology. But there are some secrets about how to do it properly, I think. However, it is a 21st century skill, and the aim is to take it away from being an elite skill to a skill that penetrates further down the socioeconomics of each of our societies. And the fourth thing that strikes me as looking at the figures from outside the region in a global context is the issue of gender. Whereas the number of women in higher education in the region is higher than that of males, like in the other regions around the world, the position of the statistics of women in employment is completely different. So inasmuch as the global economy is a competitive situation, one has to ask, I'd like to ask my colleagues, to what extent is this region and its countries fighting this international battle with one hand tied behind its back?
Thank you so much, John Meg, and all the panelists for their introductory remarks. Before I open the floor to everyone for any comments or questions, I'd like to throw a question or two on our panelists. I want to hit the nail on the head from the beginning and be as His Excellency not represented, at least to say the least.
Well, that's a very good question. Yes. Well, I'll tell you what we do at this point. We're playing the role of the negotiator in behalf of the job seeker with the private sector. If you brought in 10 young people and asked them which sector that would love to work in, government, to have your own business as an entrepreneur, or a private sector, his first or her first choice, what do you think will be? Government. Even if you were gonna be underpaid, but government, because of the social security, because of the job security at large. So what we say that what if we offered you a job that the government can guarantee you that it will not give you bad conditions, will give you social security and medical insurance, you will not get paid less than 1,200 Egyptian pounds in your pocket at the end of the month. And also, we will secure transportation and hot meal every day or equivalent in money. And be careful. Before you answer, I just want you to make sure that we are the Ministry of Industry. And those private sectors will come back to us in many other services. They know who they are dealing with. So they will come back with us in the registration, commercial registration, industrial registration, export support, services from the IMC or any other entities. So they cannot cheat on us or something. So what we're saying that in this case, we have to go to people and tell them this just to get them attracted and interested to work in the private sector. Back to your question, what about the skills gaps that they do have? How we're going to educate them in a very short time? What we did is, you know that there is a complete qualification that includes a lot of competencies and a lot of skills. If a private company came to us, let's say that a company working in the households, and say that I would love to have people working in maintenance. So I'm not taking this as a complete request. And I say, what kind of maintenance? He said, well, electrical maintenance. I said, fine. In which machine or which equipment? He said, well, let's say in refrigerator. And I asked him, what part of the refrigerator? So he said, compressor. By asking this, I'm putting a very specific target for myself, that I will get someone that's al-ahwa is sitting at home, doing nothing, have no skills whatsoever, and bring him and give him education. He can complete that while he's working and gaining money. And by doing so, we don't have to wait for the 3 years technical education or 1 year of diploma or whatever to be very specialized in one single specific or two single specific skills. So this is what we are trying to do by being very focused and playing the role of the negotiator between the two parties.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Everybody judges this. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to... I just want to throw another question to the panelists before I open the floor to everyone. How do you fix that? Is it fixable at all, and at what price?
But that in fact we augment it with more opportunities through private provision. And thereby, when you're providing more opportunities through private provision, this tends to raise all boats if you in fact address other issues. So what I was talking about here is that in the public space, there is always going to be a scope for K through 12 education, which is very important. And there's also going to be a need for various social contract reasons, post-secondary education in the public space. But that should not mean that you close the door on the possibility of other kinds of provision. And unfortunately, what we've been doing in the Arab world for far too long is creating barriers, regulatory barriers of entry that is forming a disincentive to investing in education. So the private sector it plays two roles. It plays the role of employer, therefore job seekers, so that therefore on the demand side of the employability issue, by employing people in areas, in particular sectors with lots of growth potential. But the private sector is also an investor in education and training, because education and training, not only is it an important factor for competitiveness, but it's also a very lucrative business. And we tend to think that is a dirty word. And I think we need to change our mindset. There is nothing wrong with producing, as my colleague Mohamed said, there are private institutes that are training youth that are finding 90% of them are finding jobs. So clearly they're doing something right. And we should not be afraid of those kinds of experiments. In fact, that's the only way that we are going to propel our economy forward, is by allowing better solutions and a multitude of solutions into the marketplace. There's so much that's involved in making a decision at the household level about education and training. We talked about, schools and provision and so on, but there's more. When you make a decision about where my child is going to go educated, you're dealing with information that you have at hand. Oftentimes this information is misinformation, disinformation, old information, or simply wrong information. And therefore you need to have some sort of mechanism in the marketplace where you can provide information on where the job rates are, what sectors are growing and looking for youth to be employed, so that parents and youth can make informed decisions. We talked about elevating the standard of teachers by making them a more respectable element, or we assume that our youth we need to be doctors, need to be engineers. Yes, of course, society needs doctors and engineers, but they can be more lucrative careers, and I agree with you that not everything is a career, but there are careers as well in other fields. We know today that, for example, welders in Cairo, if they're in Egypt, can earn 5,000 euros a month just by being a welder. Don't you think we'd have more welders in Egyptian society? So we need to also provide information. We need to improve the regulatory environment so that we have additional provision of education and training, not just the sense that this is a government burden that only the government can solve. So it's not privatization, it's additional opportunity. And we also need to make sure that we are removing all kinds of misinformation in the market by providing, labor market information systems, providing more access to information, and so on. And the list goes on. I would like to, go back to the challenge you put forward on gender, for example. The problem is not that we have high unemployment or we have less unemployment or firms are not employing. The problem is that people are finding things to do. They may not be captured in the job market statistics because they're moved into the informal sector. And when you talk about issues such as, trusting the private sector, well, there's so much more involved in this contract, such as decent work environments. Having the right supervision over firms and employment opportunities, and making sure that youth are finding access to the correct training that they need, and that there is a mechanism to match this. It's more than just training. There's so many elements and many moving parts to this equation.
Dr. Members, you have a quick
comment. Yeah, I'd just like to comment on a couple of things. I mean, I like what Magda said about the 21st century, and this fits very well with the concept of, you talked about the business cycle. And I want us to stop the education conversation and talk about the business cycle. If we're talking about a mind shift, we also need to talk about a mind shift in the business cycle. We need to talk about small, medium enterprise. We need to talk about, for example, the UK is the only country in the world that has a law for social enterprise, for a hybrid between the social and the business, for encouraging people to invest in the social enterprise. So again, if we really need to address the 850,000 unemployed persons every year, and even to keep the 13.2% unemployment, we need to think of new types of jobs, not just career or not career. All the startups, all the social enterprises, in order for these young people to be encouraged, in order for them to be able to start their business, they need a couple of things. Regulatory. Up till now, the bankruptcy laws in all the Arab region is terrible for SMEs and business people. You go to jail. You can't say I'm bankrupt. So this is number one. The second thing is there are no incentives for the business to invest in startups. This idea of tax exemption or not tax exemption is very unclear and murky. So we need this other thing. The third thing also we need is to think of skills. And I agree with Dalia and everyone. If we are talking about the new world, the SMEs, the social entrepreneurs, the startups of social enterprises, we need to look at skills differently. And again, we need to think of change-making skills. Not only, and I agree, of course, welding is important and the compressor is very, very important, but again, a young compressor or welder He needs to have a change-making skill. He needs to know that he can go and start a business, a small business. Yousef was talking to us in the break that anybody who wants to start a business goes to a bank and then he's met with a guy who says, you don't have any papers, how can I give you a loan? So if we want to really increase the number of employed people, we really have to change the regulatory system, the banking system. We need to encourage the businesses to invest. We need to encourage people to think out of the box and not to feel like, like they're lepers if they're doing something different. And this is really very important. A new paradigm shift in how we think about business. SMEs, a real law, I mean the government has been working on a law for a long time, a real law that encourages SMEs, supports SMEs, and an SME is not a guy who has 50 million pounds or 20 million pounds. An SME is a guy who has 50,000 pounds. And this has been a big thing, and 500 pounds. So we really need all that. And I think it's the role of the government, but not only the government, I think it's also the role of NGOs. And in spite of the fact that NGOs are having some problems now, I think there should be a reliance on the NGOs in this country.
Thank you so much. I must say I'm so impressed. I haven't heard so far a single phone ringing. Allow me now to open the floor for any questions or comments. Okay, Magda Zaki, please.
Sorry,
okay.
I just want to add...
Please go ahead.
Because it relates to perception again, but the perception is also a mind shift related to our perception to people with skills and not degrees. I mean, you talked about nurses. I know for a fact that nurses get 250 pounds per 6 hours, right? I'm telling you about a very good income. However, they never like to say they are a nurse. Right? And they hide it. You talk same with so many jobs, right? We need so badly, they make so much money, but it all goes back to the matter of our perception to this category of people and their perception to, in their own living circles. So this also we have to work on it, the social perception towards SMEs, trained and untrained, skillful, and very, very, very important people has to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions / comments, please state your name. Please make it as short, brief, precise, and to the point as possible. If you are addressing it to a specific panelist, please state so. And please, sir.
I'm Kamal Hamdan from Lebanon, a private institute, Consultation and Research Institute, which is working in Beirut since 38 years. I'm very happy to hear the presentation presented by the panelists this morning, and I found that most of these presentations focused on the education, skills, training, etc., which is very important. But all these topics are concerning the labor supply side. While I think personally from my experience on Lebanon and on Syria and on other Arab countries, that the major problem in the labor market is the demand one. The demand on labor, especially from the establishment, the private establishment, l'entreprise privée, private establishment. When we find, for example, from a more macro point of view, that among the economic determinant of growth, that in all of our Arab countries, consumption is a major factor, much more than investment. When we found that at least 90% of our establishments are less than 5 employees. When we found that at least 1/3 of our establishments are informal. And especially when we found that the whole Arab world has missed historically the industrial era. This is the créneau, the major source of job creation from an historical perspective, and the necessary realization of this process is a major step to improve the quality of services itself. In this macroeconomic perspective, what can the supply side by itself only improve the overall situation of the labor market?
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Kamal. It's a very important. Someone from the panelists, maybe John, I don't know if you'd like to address this, the issue of based on direct experience in Lebanon, demand should come first, consumption rather than investment should be the driving force.
Moderate first panel. The panel is will be discussing the socio-economic challenges and opportunities across the MENA region, education, employability.
On the demand side by other elements like good governance, financial stability, the creation of an environment that will allow for investment. But there are links. I think that the point that Emmanuel was making, and that's the area you're in, isn't it, Emmanuel? The link where actually the supply side is developing skills that are creating demand. And that's the way that you create something out of nothing, perhaps.
If I could just add, I don't think you can look at this equation or this issue from either supply side or demand side solely. It's like you need two hands to clap. So the issue here in terms of the firms and firm growth, you know, it's a chicken and egg situation, right? So the only way for firms to grow is for them to be able to cater to market demand. And to cater to market demand, they have to improve their productivity, which means they have to hire. And if they can't find the skills that they're looking for to hire, then they're not going to grow. So and this goes back to the issues that Iman was making here, and the issues that John is making, is that competitiveness, firm competitiveness is at the heart of the matter. And the only way to make a firm competitive is by giving it all the inputs it needs, whether this be skills, infrastructure, regulatory environment, access to markets, etc. Skills is one variable in the production function of firm growth, if you will. And that's the way that this needs to be looked at, that skills are an element of the production function. And without them, a firm will not be able to produce and grow, etc. So you can't look at it as either supply or demand solely. The two have to meet. And the problem that we're facing now is because we have created a disconnect between this supply and demand side. And the only way to go forward now is us to bring these two sides together again, to narrow the skills gap. In the work that we did in the region over the past number of years, we did some diagnostic study of many countries in the region. We identified particular sectors that were in growth mode. We looked at Jordan, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt. We're now looking at Yemen. We're looking at Palestine. And the question is, which sectors of these economies have comparative advantage, are linked into global and regional markets, have the potential to grow, but one of the issues that is constraining this growth is skills. And we've identified 3 to 5 sectors in each of these markets, and we're now developing projects whereby we speak to business federations of these sectors, asking them what are the skills profiles that you're looking for, a lot of what the ITC is doing here in Egypt. What are the skills profiles you're looking for? Going back to education providers and training providers to make sure that they cater to these competency frameworks, and then setting up sector skills councils so you can have that continuous feedback between the supply and demand side in growth sectors.
I'd just like to add another thing also. I think the map has changed. I mean, there are providers and suppliers, but there is also the in-between. And I think what we're trying to say here is that the supply can be, the person who demands tomorrow, if we allow for this fluctuation in the market. Small is beautiful. I really have this problem with the fact that now all of us want to have the fast food franchise where they have to scale up everywhere. If we have small and medium enterprises everywhere, I mean, the informal sector in Egypt, and I can speak about Egypt, is very, very active and very fluid, and it's offering a lot of jobs. If we have a good regulatory system, we can have a lot of people working. And if we have a million small and medium enterprise jobs with everyone having 5, that's 5 million people. So what I'm saying is, I think we have, again, to go to the mind shift. The mind shift of there is no two sides of supply and demand. There is a fluctuation of somebody tomorrow is a supplier and today is the demander or whatever we call them. And really, we have a lot of young kids now that are doing online startups. But they need only he and his sister or he and his wife or she and her husband. And they don't need a lot of people, but they're able to produce something. So I actually think we really need to change that.
If I may add, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Very quickly, I want to add that you need this flexibility, but also education or learning is a lifelong.
And absolutely in the mindset of the young people. So I think that we need to re-educate the young generation to have the spirit of challenge and venture into new experiences. And to do that, I think we need to equip them with the adequate and the relevant skills that they must have in addition to their degree or diploma. So when we equip them with the right skills, I think they will be prepared to deal with problems, manage a crisis, etc. In addition to the skills, I think that the second thing is that the government should set up rules and terms and conditions, and bank as well, that are available to the young generation and are adequate to their new situation. So when we secure, I think that the problem with the young generation, why they opt for government jobs, is for the security, as we say it here. But when you equip the young generation and you give them the security, I think they will be prepared to opt for the private sector, which we know that the majority of industries in the private sector offers more opportunities for the young generation. So I think in that case, young people would be opting for venturing into the private sector, starting up their business, because in case of a crisis, in case of a problem, they will know how to manage that problem, they will know how to deal with that problem. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Who would like from the panel? Dali?
I just want to comment on a word that we've used a lot on the panel and from the audience and so forth, a phrase which is mindset or perception. I think we tend to use that concept as a catch-all when in fact what we're trying to say is that this is the way things are done. And the way things are done becomes the mindset. And I want to suggest that in that phraseology, the operative word there is not so much mind, but set. If we change the way things are set, you will be surprised how quickly people will change that. So if you're saying that people prefer government positions, it's because the information base that they're, the way things are done, is that government jobs are secure, you get Social Security, and so on and so forth. Change that. Change that set, and the mind will follow suit. If you give, people will respond to economic stimuli. If you say that nurses today are earning more money, and that's a public bit of information, you will be surprised how quickly they earn respect when they become, breadwinners, and they become the people that are able to support families and so on. So I think we should not shackle ourselves with the view that what is the mindset or what is the perception is something that we're stuck in. It is just something that we have to change if we recognize that that's the hindering mindset.
And I agree, but I also think, and I think the mindset is because people have been set to do that, whatever you want to call it. But also, and I don't know if what I'm going to say people will be popular with everyone here, but there's also another aspect.
Okay, So how about Shobini? I noticed that when Dr. Iman Bebas was talking about accountability, or rather lack of it, so you were smiling. Explain your smile, please.
It's, well, I was very actually, it's a very good line, and may I quote you on this mindset thing? It's amazing. Well, we're talking about changing the mindset. I just recalled what Komatsu did against Caterpillar early in the 90s, when they did not actually change culture and they did not change the mindset of their employees. They just changed the set, as Dalia just mentioned. They made a small exercise, and they went to Caterpillar and asked them what you want to be in the next 5 years. And they went to the chairperson and he said, well, I would love my company to be the company that has the biggest capital in the money market. And when they asked the general manager of the production lines, he said, I would love to produce a machine that blew the deepest ever in the world. And when they asked the office boy, he said, I would love my company to be the cleanest company in the world. When they did this exercise to Komatsu, from the chairperson till the office boy, they answered one question: beat Caterpillar. So they did not change the mindset. They give a very simple thing to people, to labor, to employees, to believe in and to work accordingly. They changed the set and their mind changed accordingly. So I cannot agree more with what you said. Thank you very much for that. So back to the question regarding the accountability. Yes, it's we're hearing a lot about the accountability, transparency, and this kind of big things. It's but on the ground, we have to put the system to be able to act according to accountability. Because if you have 6 million public servants in the government, which is the highest public servant in the whole world compared to population, whole China, 1.8 billion, we have only 1.5 million people working in the government. We have 90 million and we have 6 million working in the public sector. So, which accountability that you're talking about? So it's not an easy task to find it. So you have to have the system that adapt the concept of transparency and accountability and allow information to be accessed by everyone, and set the rules mainly for the public servants, and then let's talk about accountability. It's not an easy task, but I hope that it will be in the right place.
Okay, thank you so much. I think room perhaps for one more question. The gentleman, you wanted to talk a long time ago, yes.
Hello. I'll allow myself to speak as a used to be young person from the Arab world.
Iman Bebas, Regional Director for Akusha, which is involved in promoting social entrepreneurship to create new opportunities. Next to her, we have Dr. Dalia. She is the regional head of the E4E initiative for Dr. Iman Bebas, Regional Director for Akusha, which is involved in promoting social entrepreneurship.
And I hope the Egyptians will allow me to say this in Egypt. I won't be in trouble. How can we get rebels into classrooms instead of traditional teachers? If we privatize public schools, in Lebanon we privatize them, they're privatized for religious institutions. What can we do about that? What do you think about that? We're talking about young people want to go to government. What 21st century skills should I have as a young person if there are no employment opportunities and our marketplaces are at high political, economic, and security risks? So these are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for all these questions, which you need like a week at least. We need some very brief interjections here so that we can address. Okay, I'm going to save John until the end if you don't mind, because some of the questions, probably also on behalf of the British Council, you might like to answer. But a very quick interjection, please, Doctor.
I just want to say, we keep on saying there is no employability. What we're saying is, we think there is no employability. If people are starting their own businesses, if people are allowed, then there will be employability. If people are thinking out of the box of thinking, I'm going to work for part-time here, changing the idea of career. If people are saying, okay, I might have been trained to be a doctor. I have a dentist working with us. We have a dentist, we have an engineer who are working in the social enterprises and social entrepreneurship. So I think that there are employability, there are opportunities if we want to find them. And I really think that, yes, we need to change the education system out of question. But until we do this, we also have to be responsible citizens who are trying to improve our own skills. There are opportunities, we just have to take them. And quick.
Thank you.
I'm just going to say, I don't know who you were referring to, and you said there was not enough youth in the room.
Me. Okay.
No, but just to respond to your question, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I want to say once again, nobody's talking about privatizing anything. What we're talking about is improving quality in what exists and increasing opportunity by widening the scope of who can provide education and training. And that's a very important distinction, because words that we use can trigger different emotions, and so you want to make sure that we're being exact in what we're saying. So I'll just leave that.
I just want to confirm another thing you said, and which is, again, this is the time for it, and that's innovation and creativity. This is the era par excellence for innovation and creativity, and we are promoting very much this in the Arab League. We have just putting measures for innovation and creativity in the Arab world, and I'm just happy to confirm this to you. Right?
Okay, John, why don't we have enough decision makers?
I think we have quite a lot of decision makers in the room. Look at the job titles of my fellow panelists, not me obviously, but I can see they're decision makers and policy makers, and certainly people who influence the policy makers. And we all have our bosses, but we all have our spheres of influence. And perhaps that is the problem, that if we always look upwards for the solution, then we're not going to solve the problem. In fact, it seems to me, especially if you're looking to improve education systems based on teachers, students, and school units. School units are improved by the people who work in the schools. All reforms have to be both top-down and bottom-up. People in the schools know what their local context needs. They need to be given the autonomy to do it, and hopefully the resources to do it. In fact, all the policy makers need to do, arguably, is to allow them to do it.
Great, thank you so much indeed. I'm afraid we've just run out of time, and I have to... okay, very quickly please, if you don't mind.
Sanjida Tabbara, Dean of Humanities, Bahrain Polytechnic. I'd just like to make a comment about something that we've been talking about.
To create new opportunities. Next to her, we have Dr. Dalia Khalifa. She is the regional
We heard about it at the plenary session this morning. We won't get there unless we have a partnership and we have an open dialogue between all stakeholders. This is very important. Let me give a couple of examples. For instance, if we want our educators to put market needs, we need to have the two parties discuss what they want. We need to have, for example, curriculum advisory committees in our institutions, whether they are private, whether they are public, from the industry that advise our educational system what they require and what they need and what are the skills and what are the areas of specialization. We also cannot have SMEs flourish anywhere unless we have a partnership.
Acting upon good practice initiatives in the region. For network of partners to agree on future agendas and plans of actions, a discussion paper, including lessons learned through the interactions, and finally agreeing on future
by having some kind, by funding an incubation center, for example, where it is funded by the industry and we have young entrepreneurs taking part and starting off their own businesses. So what we need is partnerships. We also need to have, another example, we need to have the private sector provide some kind of financial commitment for some kind of an empowerment or tamkeen center that takes the money, spends it on our youth in order to provide them with the training and the skills that they require in the industries or the work market. We need to have some kind of a development bank where we commit through this development bank that people, young people who are entrepreneurs and who would like to start a small business can go and get some very low interest, if not free interest, loans. Unless we have this partnership between the private and the public sector, we will not be able to achieve this. And it is being done. I have seen examples of it.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sure that we will all have the time throughout all the panels and the breakout sessions to comment and to throw questions. Thank you so much for everyone in the room, especially thank you to my distinguished panelists, Dr. Iman Bebers, Dr. Dalia Khalifa, Mr. Mahmoud Shirbini, Ms. Magda Zaki, and last but not least, John Mag. Thank you so much, and I believe if the organizers haven't changed anything in the agenda, it's lunchtime.